Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.
Welcome to the latest edition of Future Trends, the weekly briefing on the changing face of global politics, economics, development, social and conflict. Here's this week's headline stories. US tariffs and aid cuts a double hit to developing countries. Pakistan's deadliest month in a decade. Hungary says it is withdrawing from the ICC. Thousands rally against mercenaries in the Central African Republic. India passes bill on Muslim properties. Deadly antibiotic-resistant superbug spreading in Malaysia. And how a drive for electric vehicles is cleaning up Nepal. Now for the latest in politics. Hungary says it is withdrawing from ICC. The Hungarian government says it will withdraw from the International Criminal Court. It comes as Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu arrived in the Hungarian capital for a state visit. As a founding member of the ICC, Hungary is theoretically obliged to arrest and hand over anyone subject to a warrant from the court. However, the ICC can't force it to act. India passes bill on Muslim properties. The move would give Prime Minister Modi's Hindu nationalist government a larger role in validating Muslim landholdings. The government says the changes will help to fight corruption and mismanagement while promoting diversity, but critics fear that it will further undermine the rights of the country's Muslim minority and could be used to confiscate historic mosques and other property. Trump wants to serve third term. US President Trump says he is not joking about trying to secure a third term as US president, indicating he is considering ways to circumvent existing laws that prevent him from doing so when his second term ends in 2029. Jordan Bardella inherits the French far-right spotlight. Bardella, 30, grew up in public housing and by 23 was a member of the European Parliament. By 26, Marine Le Pen had made him party president of Rally National, the first person outside the Le Pen family. While Le Pen has vowed to fight a 5-year ban, Bardella is in line to replace her as leader of the far-right French party. Supreme Court allows US deportations to resume. In a 5-4 decision, the court vacated an earlier order that blocked the use of an 18th century wartime law to deport immigrants with little or no due process. The decision allowed the US government to resume use of the Aliens Enemies Act to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador. Here's the latest in conflict. Europe is preparing for possible war with Russia. Danish and German intelligence have warned that NATO should brace for a potential attack in as little as 5 years and may not have US support. Poland is planning to train every adult male for war. Norway is restoring old military bunkers. And Germany has unlocked billions for a historic boost to defence spending. Pakistan's deadliest month in a decade. More than 100 deadly attacks by Islamist militants and separatist rebels killed 335 people. The Islamist militant Pakistani Taliban, or Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and the separatist rebel Balochistan Liberation Army were the main militant groups responsible for the attacks. Israel hit Syrian bases scoped by Turkey. Turkey reportedly was assessing the sites to deploy forces as part of a planned joint defence pact before Israel hit them with airstrikes, risking a deepening rift between two powerful regional militaries over Syria, where Islamist rebels have installed a new government after toppling former leader Bashar al-Assad in December. In Gaza, Israel said it would look to capture large areas in a new ground assault following the collapse of the ceasefire. Russia open to security guarantees for Ukraine. Russia's negotiator insisted there was a positive outcome after 2 days of talks with US envoy Steve Witkoff in Washington. Thousands rally against mercenaries in Central African Republic. The country is one of the first in which the Wagner mercenaries established operations with the pledge of fighting rebel groups and restoring peace. Russian-led Wagner forces have served as personal bodyguards for the president, helping him win a constitutional referendum in July 2023 that could extend his power indefinitely. Moving to the latest stories in economics. US tariffs and aid cuts a double hit to developing countries. With proposed US tariff increases reaching as high as 50% on imports from 24 countries, alongside significant reductions in official development assistance, ODA, it poses a serious threat to already vulnerable developing economies like Cambodia and Lesotho, whose stability and development hinge on trade and international aid. Cambodia's exports to the US represent 36% of GDP, while Lesotho is also facing steep 50% tariffs, while simultaneously relying on international aid for nearly 7% of its economy. Meanwhile, the EU, which is the world's largest single market, says it is prepared to retaliate against the US imposition of a 20% tariff on its goods. China, Japan, South Korea to bolster trade ties. The three nations announced they have agreed to accelerate negotiations on their trilateral free trade agreement and enhance cooperation in supply chain management and export controls. Congress has power to halt Trump's tariffs. But Republicans aren't ready to use it. As stock markets tumble in the aftermath of the US government's sweeping tariffs, Republicans in Congress were watching with unease and talking of clawing back their power to levy tariffs. But almost none seemed ready to turn their words into action. Despite clear misgivings and a constitutional mandate to decide tariffs, most lawmakers were not ready to cross President Trump. Instead, they were focusing all their attention on advancing the president's tax breaks and spending cuts. Spain housing rents double in a decade. Nearly 40% of families who rent now spend more than 40% of their income on their accommodation. In the last decade, income has only gone up 20%. In Barcelona, 54 families compete to rent each property, up from 9 families 5 years ago, while rental costs there during that time increased by 60%. Libyan authorities suspend 10 international aid groups. The aid organisations were accused of violating local laws by providing aid to African migrants. Libya, which shares borders with 6 nations and has a long coastline along the Mediterranean, is a main transit point for migrants seeking to get to Europe. Here's the latest in development. Somalia offers US control over Somaliland's port of Berbera. The offer of access to air bases and seaports has reignited tensions between Somalia's government and the breakaway region of Somaliland. The ports of Berbera and Bosaso have long attracted global interest due to their strategic location near the entrance of the Red Sea, while the US has helped Somali forces with airstrikes and other support against the Al-Shabaab extremist group and an affiliate of the Islamic State. How a drive for electric vehicles is cleaning up Nepal. With air pollution causing a fifth of deaths in Nepal, growing EV use could add nearly 3 years to Kathmandu residents' lives. Deadly, antibiotic-resistant superbug spreading in Malaysia. A drug-resistant strain of A. baumannii is spreading in a Malaysian hospital, posing a global health threat due to its resistance to key antibiotics and lack of surveillance in low-income regions. Australian universities close Chinese government-linked institutes. 6 Australian universities have now closed Confucius institutes on their campuses, 2 years after the federal government signalled it would not allow any more of the controversial educational centres to open their doors in Australia. Dire wolf revived through biotech company's de-extinction process. A US biotech company said it has brought back the extinct animal that last walked the Earth roughly 10,000 years ago. It extracted dire wolf DNA from 2 existing fossils to better sequence the animal's genome, used a close relative of the dire wolf as the base, before using surrogate dogs to give birth to 3 dire wolves in the last 6 months, moving to social. Ronin the rat sets new landmine-sniffing record. A landmine-detecting rat in Cambodia has set a new world record to become the first rodent to uncover more than 100 mines and other deadly remnants from the civil war that ended in 1998. Ronin, an African giant pouched rat, has uncovered 109 landmines and 15 items of unexploded ordnance since 2021. US bans staff in China from romance with Chinese citizens. American government personnel in China, as well as family members and contractors with security clearances, have been banned from any romantic or sexual relationships with Chinese citizens. Rhinos have returned to Uganda. Rhinos went extinct in Uganda 40 years ago due to poaching, trafficking, and political turmoil. Now, a private ranch is home to almost 50. The project has been so successful, they are now running out of land. Zoning out during simple tasks could supercharge your brain. Letting your mind spontaneously wander, especially when doing something that doesn't require much focus, might be helping you learn in unexpected ways, a new study suggests. Spontaneous mind-wandering provided a boost to the brain's ability to detect and learn from hidden patterns, with the sleep-like state linked to memory consolidation and unconscious learning. American arrested for leaving can of cola for uncontactable tribe. An American tourist who snuck onto the highly restricted island of North Sentinel to visit a Sentinelese tribe untouched by the modern world, carrying a coconut and a can of Diet Cola. As offerings has been arrested by Indian authorities. The journey took him 9 hours in a small boat on the open sea.
Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.